Hi, I'm Dan Kingsley with the Realty Edge Team at EXP. Basically, I came from the Zumbrota area, grew up and finished high school there. After that, I went into the military, Army National Guard, and went on a couple deployments, came back, started a family with my wife. I had a real estate license because one of my mentors had told me about getting into rental properties. So that's kind of how I backdoored myself into real estate. Bought a house, thought I could maybe do a better job than the person that I was using at the time, and started learning more about it. Kind of did some dabbling with rental properties, but started really slow in 2008. Was when I got my license, and that's when I was doing it full time. So I looked a lot back at the history and found out a lot about values, what's happened to them in the last decade at that time, and really got a good idea on what I wanted to do when the market got better. Kind of started that way, came in, worked, 40, 60 hours a week, producing absolutely nothing for my bank account. But I did learn a lot. I had a lot of time to research on different brokerages, model types. Teams were just starting at the time. So I got a lot of good information, even though I didn't make any money. And then I met Kyle, my teammate now, but at the time he was brand new, didn't have a job, just graduated from college. He was kind of trying to get into the rental and investing in real estate. And so kind of told him that you can't do that without a job. And we had a good chuckle about that. He got his real estate license and he joined the same brokerage I was at the time. And we literally had a closet-sized space with a little pocket door, and we couldn't both back out at the same time because our desks were opposite. And we called from the phone book. We previewed 6 to 8 properties every day because we didn't have any buyers at the time, or didn't have very many. And really got a good handle on systems that we wanted to implement once everything got going again in real estate. So this is 2009. We actually started trying to get into purchasing some investment foreclosure short sales, got to know those. Both of us took a CDPE, Certified Distressed Property Expert class. One of the big things we took away from doing all these foreclosures is we had to do so much volume, we hardly made any money. So it was about the volume, and that we had really long hours, and we did all kinds of crazy stuff. Like that was back when you didn't have data plans, and we started coming up with how can we do this faster with less effort. So that's really where we started to hone in systems on. We take a listing into our inventory, then we really start working on, these are all the things that need to happen. How fast can we do them? Who can do them? And can we do them simultaneously? So he could be out doing one, I could be doing another one, and putting them in. And it worked okay. We needed an assistant, so that's how the team started to grow because of the process. But then, like I said, we did it for a couple of years. That kind of ended. We got into residential, and it's kind of been the same way ever since. So he and I started, I think officially 2010 for the Realty Edge team. And once we moved on from that, we had an assistant, kind of moved from there. Then we started growing the team with buyers agents, and that's kind of how everything's been building. We kept trying to come up with, better ways of doing transactions, generating clients, giving clients a better experience. And through that process, we've come up with a lot of stuff, like we've got our core values on the wall here, coming up with that, coming up with like what we do, why we do it, because it can get monotonous in the fact that you're constantly like retraining and going through the process with people. It's different. Everybody's different. Every client's different. Every house purchase is different. But you're kind of like, you're saying a lot of the same things over and over again, and you have to figure out a way to keep that empathy there so that, you never want to talk down to a client, even though you're saying the same things hundreds and hundreds of times. Our contracts are changing every year. Like the state of Minnesota comes out with new contracts. The market's changing monthly, quarterly, yearly, like things are, mortgage industry's changing. So all these elements are always changing. So even though some of the basics are the same, we have to re-educate clients every time they buy a house. Unless they're buying multiple houses in the year, then maybe they're keeping up on it. But and I'd say that's probably, one of the things that keeps the job interesting is that all kinds of different people that you meet and you get to enjoy. But at the same time, there's just enough change with the industry because of technology and money that's flowing into it from all these other companies that keep you on your toes, so you have to stay relevant. Like when I got into real estate, usually all you saw was one or maybe a couple pictures on the MLS that was online, because online was kind of new. And just before that, you get a book that was almost a week and a half to 2 weeks old when it got published to find out what was a new listing, and it had one little picture, and a lot of times it's black and white. So people had to go to open houses to see new listings. Now open houses are, in a way, have gone irrelevant. They're a great way to build rapport with a client and get somebody out there that maybe isn't ready to commit to anything yet. But at the same time, because technology's changed, the MLS has changed, and we're all trying to give clients a better experience, they can see all that stuff online. They can they can go through the virtual tours if the listing agent has that up there. They can walk through it on a blizzard day or a hot sweltering day, or even if they're not at home. And it allows them to do that, which is great. Like, we're moving forward. But at the same time, the power that real estate agents once had of all the information about a property that you had to come directly to the agent to get is gone. Like, we're putting all that information out there for people, so that they can make those decisions and not waste their own time. And it's a lot less frustrating for them. There are parts that are always going to be a little bit frustrating with the legalities of it, the process, depending on their job and all that stuff, and what they need to prove, more or less, to get loans and to get into the house. But that's what we're here for. We're here to take them through that process. That is probably one of the most rewarding parts of this job as well, is just to kind of get them through from the beginning of, no matter how familiar they are, if it's their first house or their 20th house, and say, hey, here's the update on what's going on. These are the things you need to think about, be prepared for, and so that we can, mitigate some of the stresses and frustrations through that process to get them what they want. Ultimately, it's always get them what they want when they want, so that they can enjoy the house. And so how do we do that, and how do we make sure that they're not being caught off guard and getting frustrated? Because no matter what, it's kind of an emotional roller coaster. So we're trying to mitigate the bumps as much as we possibly can. Working with a brand new buyer or someone that hasn't bought for quite a few years, some of the things that we always want to go through is just understand that there's two types of agents. Well, typically there's two types of agents. There's the buyer's agent and the listing agent. Now, each agent works for their respective client. It does a buyer no good to try to contact a listing agent and have that person work for them, because they have a fiduciary duty specifically for the listing, or the seller of the house. The listing agent is a seller's agent. So a buyer should always have their own agent that represents them, just like you would an attorney if you're going to court. You need somebody in your corner that's going to protect you and take care of you. Short of somebody being like a Priceline negotiator from, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, most real estate agents are going to know what and how to say things in their client's best interest. So it's never an advantage for a buyer to go directly to the listing agent or directly to the seller. Just because the legality, the way it's set up in Minnesota and most states, the Latin term for it is caveat emptor, which just means buyer beware. And the important thing with that is the law is not set up to protect the buyer. It's actually set up that it's up to the buyer to do the due diligence. So if they don't have a realtor protecting them and doing that for them and knowing what to look for and knowing what's normal and knowing what the state requires, they could put themselves in a really bad position. And yes, they could sue the seller later on, but if the seller is smart and they've got an agent working for them that's making sure that they're disclosing everything and waiving their hands of anything beyond the sale, the buyer could really, really be in a bad spot. So you definitely want to have a buyer's agent in your corner. For me, in real estate and this position that I have, I'm passionate about a lot of things, but really what it comes down is to being able to take a client, meet somebody for the first time, ask them the right questions, and listen to exactly what they're saying and what they're not saying, to figure out what they're really looking for in a house. And most of the time, it's just showing in places, recording what they're saying, asking the questions again, getting through the process, and making sure they're happy, and checking in with them all along the way. before we write the offer. Then when we write the offer, that's a whole nother process. But just being that advocate for them, and once I gain their trust, it makes the process a whole lot easier, but it's also very fulfilling knowing that they're taking a huge risk on purchasing something that typically is something they have to get a loan for. So they're doing a lot of work to get the loan. It's a lot of money for them, and it's a big step, especially the first house. But having that relationship with them, getting that trust earned from them, is a good feeling. Closing it off, making sure they're happy at the end, checking with them after the sale, and maintaining that relationship. So when they're ready to sell that place and buy the next place, we have a good standing relationship and they're ready to trust me again.